audio is working. So if you guys could, someone could throw a message on chat and confirm that we're coming in loud and clear, we'll go ahead and get this stuff started. And until then, I'm just going to chatter away. So let's see if we can have anyone say that they can hear me, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I see a couple people in the channel here, so let's see if... all right, sweet. Everyone can hear me. Awesome. Everyone, it is so exciting to be able to talk to you about this game. It's going to be a lot of fun to share with you about Expeditions Rome as we go through this journey and ramp up from our announce a week or so ago to our launch coming up at an undisclosed time, but it's not going to be too far away. The game is actually quite far along. And it's going to be a great adventure to share with you a deep dive and exposure into the different features about Rome. I'd love to introduce you now. It's my great pleasure to say hi, everyone, to, I think it's to my side. This is Jonas. He's our creative director. Say hi to everybody, Jonas.
Yeah, hello. I'm Jonas Wæver. I am the creative director of Logic Artists in Copenhagen, Denmark. Been with the company for almost 10 years now. My anniversary is in September. I was there right from the start, helped found the company. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on the stream and say hi to you all.
Yeah, so you're the main office is based in Copenhagen, and then you guys have a satellite office, I think, out in Turkey. Is that right? Getting that right? Yeah.
In Istanbul, Turkey. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And you've been there. I mean, you've been the creative director the entire way through. So from Conquistadors through to Vikings and now to Rome. This has been your. It's been quite a journey, I imagine, through the evolutions of the studio over 10 years.
Yeah, it's been very satisfying to see the studio grow and the games get incrementally better and better. And this one sure is a leap forward in terms of budget and quality. So it's been great.
And size and stress and a number of other things.
All of those things, yes.
A lot of people don't, we haven't talked about this too much. This is the first time interacting with you guys, but there was this meeting back, I guess about a year and a half ago or so. We were sitting there talking about the project, and originally the game was actually supposed to be just in North Africa. And we had a very different storyline and campaign that we were building, and we had this moment where like, we may be crazy, but it doesn't make sense for a game called Rome to just take place in North Africa. There's so many places that the Roman Empire or Republic interacted with, and maybe we should grow bigger. And now the game has grown, I think, even bigger than we expected back during that famous whiteboard meeting. It's a monster in a good way.
Yeah, no, I think a year later we can confirm that we were indeed crazy, but we've pulled it off. So it's been a hell of a year.
Yeah. So just to give you guys, everyone some expectations for what we're going to be doing on these dev streams, we're going to do them in the beginning about every 3 weeks. There's going to be a calendar posted on our community site. We'd love for you guys to join us there. It's community.expeditionseries.com. I think someone in the chat will actually post that. That's where we actually post our dev diaries, which are going to come before each of these streams. So every 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to put a dev diary out. It'll be on a different topic, and then we'll come on here and talk about those diaries with you together. We always take questions from the dev diaries. So if you end up asking a question or interacting with us on the community site on those diaries, you'll almost always get those questions read on stream. And we'll have a nice, fun time interacting with you there. We'll be showing gameplay footage here. Right now, we're mostly just showing the stuff that we've released. We have some B-roll footage we're showing, but every stream, we're going to be showing some new cool stuff. We're going to be hopefully eventually actually playing the game live on these streams. So that'll be coming on down the road, and we'll have some cool interaction moments with that. We'll bring on some special guests. I'm not going to say who yet, but I know in June right now we have a really cool special guest planned, as well as guests from the development team, and you get a chance to meet the different developers, from Jonas to some of our artists, our other designers. We'll have a number of different people coming on, so it should be a lot of fun to experience these with us here. If you ever miss one, obviously the VOD will be up on our channel, and we're also planning to post them on YouTube the day after the stream too, so you can see them. But when you chat on the channel, we'll react. I see one proud Bavarian here who's also a part of one of our other communities, so he's seen some of those interactions in real time on the other side. You're going to have a lot of fun being involved with the stream. I think you'll really enjoy it. So let's jump into Rome. I'm sure some people have already seen some of our materials and seen some of the press. And by the way, it's been really exciting to talk about this and see the positive response. But Jonas, maybe you can give us like a really quick, and I know it's impossible to summarize this game, but maybe a very brief summary. What is Rome? How would you describe that to somebody?
Yes, on a very high level, I would describe it as a top-down role-playing game. It is party-based, it has turn-based combat, and it incorporates a lot of strategy elements as well. It is a strategy RPG, but really the RPG comes first there. It just sounds stupid when you say it that way.
Yeah, I think that's something that when we've engaged with people about the product, even when I've been talking about it internally inside of THQ Nordic, people look at it and immediately seem it's just a turn-based strategy game. And that's the big focus of it. And that is true. There's a lot of really cool mechanics and turn-based combat in there, but the role-playing aspect, me personally, I think that's the game comes to life when it comes to the world and the characters you interact with.
Yeah, it is very story-based, probably more story-based than people expect. In some sense, more story-based than Viking as well. We have been improving our storytelling all the way through, and that aspect of taking on a role and exploring this narrative we've crafted for you is very central to the whole experience.
And also, I think there's other elements in here that Vikings and Conquistadors, I guess, had this to a certain degree, but it was big for us in Rome because you can't talk about Rome without thinking about the legions and the armies and this idea of going out and conquering. So there's a whole meta system around you being eventually, you have to go through the ranks a little bit, but being running a legion and controlling a region in these different parts of the world. You go from Greece, and then you're in Africa, and then eventually in Gaul. That's a big part of it too.
Yeah, it's always been an aspect of the series, but it's always been one we had to kind of background and talk about it in the story and imply that the army is there, but without you ever really being able to use it for anything or interact with it in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
So we really knew this time going into it, when you think about Rome, you think about big armies and the legions moving in and taking over, and that was an aspect we really wanted to represent, not just in the story, but also in the game systems. And finding a way to reconcile that with the existing gameplay of the series, which is based on small squad tactics, has obviously been a challenge. So there's a division between those two aspects of the game, but they interact in interesting ways.
Yeah, there's it's actually one of the last features. So a little bit of a glimpse into where we're at in the product development. We're well into our alpha process. We're actually charging right now to through beta and kind of doing the final feature implementations and then going through polish. And we're going to be polishing the game for a little while. So we're really trying to create the most polished experience we can. And we don't know how long that's going to take. But we have some ideas, and hopefully we'll be able to announce that to you in the next couple months. But one of the trailing features that are going through quite a bit of iteration is that kind of legion combat system. We have an entire kind of mini feature built around how legions fight each other, which we haven't shown yet because we're changing it quite a bit right now and iterating. But it's really cool looking. It's really cool ideas there.
Yeah, it is one of the very new things we're adding, so it was inevitable it would have to go through a bunch of iteration in order for us to really be able to nail down the fantasy of it.
Yeah. So another big aspect is the setting, right? We're in Rome, but maybe you can tell everyone a little bit about where this game takes place, the time frame, and the history of the world a little bit.
Yeah, so like with the previous games, we've taken a fairly long time span and compressed it a bit. We've actually compressed it less than previously. The story now spans quite a few years, just so we could more accurately represent all these different environments that we have in the game now, the different campaigns that we want to represent. So we start in Greece during the Third Mithridatic War, and then you visit Rome after that campaign in order to advance your own personal plot and sort of get the follow-up on all the decisions you made during this war. Then the story moves to Africa through plot machinations, which I would describe as the least sort of historically based. Like, all of the things there are based on people and events that happened, but not necessarily for the reasons they happened or at the time that they happened in our story. Then you return to Rome again after that. Again, many things will react to which decisions you made during this Africa campaign. And then finally, we have the famous Gallic War, of course, that Caesar really made his name in. We really wanted to represent that in some form in the game as well.
Yeah, I think that's actually a fun element. There's already been some debates going on. I've seen on YouTube video comments and whatnot about the historical accuracy, and there's a little bit of drama today. If people didn't see, we released the female alt version of our gameplay trailer because choosing a male or a female hero has a big impact on it. But there's a tremendous amount of not just historical elements in the game, but historical characters and moments in history, things that we really do try to make come to life. And I think that's actually, in a way, there's legacy from that in the franchise itself, from Conquistadors and Vikings. And in Rome, I think we're doing it even more. I actually see, and by the way, for those who are just meeting me for the first time and this is your first stream, you'll learn that one of my best character traits is that I always slaughter people's names on the streams, no matter how hard I try to get it right. So the Kashti, I have no idea how to pronounce your name. I'm so sorry. But they're saying they're playing Vikings right now and really enjoying it. And I think you're going to find as you're playing through Vikings and kind of seeing how I'm waiting for the channel to tear me apart for how I mispronounce that. Barely Tactical is quite easier, so that's good. Those historical elements and those elements of what happened there come to life. It's actually when I first met you guys, something when I was researching the background on Vikings and the team, people thought that Vikings was one of the games that really brought that era to life in a really cool way, like in a very real way.
Yeah, it's always been an interesting balance for us because the series is first and foremost an RPG series. Like you are stepping into history, creating your own character, and it wouldn't be much of an RPG if you had to follow history slavishly, right? You have to have some choices. You have to have major choices that can change the entire course of history. So of course we start out based on history. All of the people you meet are many of them real historical characters. The equipment, the locations you visit are based on archaeological evidence, historical evidence.
Yeah.
But the events that you stumble into can be drastically changed by your own choices, and it doesn't follow history because unless you want it to. You can make historically accurate choices, or you can choose to play as a woman, lead the legion into battle, and then act in completely differently than what Caesar, for example, did in real life.
Yeah, and I think the we wanted to provide that kind of interesting choice when it comes to making a male or female hero, so you have that kind of onus on yourself. But I actually remember like the first time I played the female hero, and you go to that very first character you walk up to on the trireme, and he's like, go, don't do if fighting happens, stay behind us. Like you even get those comments in the very beginning where everyone assumes that you're not going to participate in combat, that's not what you are, and then you surprise everybody with being competent and well trained, and you run into a console who can literally do whatever he wants. He's a console, and then things just kind of like go from there, and it's a very interesting kind of. I like how how you guys the team has gone after that in a way that still allows the fantasy of people that want to play that role to become a reality, but being very aware of how odd or how interesting some of your choices may be perceived by the different characters you run into. It's quite, I don't know, I love it. It's a really compelling part of the game that you guys have made.
It's definitely something we had a lot of fun with, of trying to figure out how to make it plausible and how to, just having the game react to which character you're playing is always fun. And this was a major thing, like a major pivot point for us.
Yeah, I actually see in Vikings, they're referencing it in the chat channel, 100%, right? That choice in Vikings also made pretty big. Like people reacted very different if you were a female Viking conqueror. I remember playing that myself.
It's even more this time though. We took it way further in Rome.
It's fun. So let's jump into a little bit more about the dev diary. So our dev diary this week was based on what I think is a great starting point when we're talking about a product, a game. It's what is the vision? Because game development, as many of you probably know, is a very arduous and tricky process. And there's a lot of times you get excited about different things in stream, like as you're building it, and that can cause things to go in all sorts of random directions. So a lot of developers and Logic Artist has done this exercise too. In the very beginning, you kind of think about what is important to us. What are the things that we want to stay focused on, so that the game that we're trying to make becomes the game that we actually do make, as we're being faced with different prioritizations and decisions. So we listed, I guess, these kind of like 4 vision statements that are really important for us when we were building the game. And I think it'd be kind of a fun thing to walk through each of those, and maybe you can tell stories if you have any of them from the development process where these vision statements kind of informed or came back to you as you're trying to make decisions. I know that's happened a number of times. The first one, I think, really ties into what we've been talking about a lot so far already in this stream, which is, we want to create an immersive, story-rich RPG with player-driven choices and fully voiced dialogue.
Yeah, full voiceover is a new thing for us, and it's been amazing to be able to do that with THQ's backing this time. It's always a big thing in an RPG with as many words of text as we tend to put into our game, but it cannot be overstated how much it adds to the game experience to have all these great actors add their own interpretation to each of the characters. We already pride ourselves on having some really deep and interesting non-player characters for you to meet and engage with. That's also a big part of it being story-driven. Is making sure that there's some really fun characters for you to meet that also help to bring the history to life.
Yeah.
Many of them are based on historical characters. Others are just pulled out of thin air. And having those be brought to life by actual actors and be able to just like let go of the mouse and keyboard and lean back and just see the dialogue play out. I mean, it's it really adds a lot.
Yeah, I think you were doing voice recording sessions earlier this morning, right? Like you're in the midst of a lot of VR recording right now for the game.
It's tremendous fun. It's just, I love working with actors and trying to work through the process of interpreting a character and interpreting a scene, also with the director there. It really makes you think about the story that you wrote in a totally different way. And it's especially fun when the director starts really interpreting what's going on in the mind of this character, and you just sit there as a writer, go like, yes, that is exactly what I had in mind. That I thought about all these things when I wrote this. I am just that good. It's a lot of fun.
Those are always a fun moment when you're watching an actor interpret. I think it's true with any like creative, right, an artist, where like someone interprets something that you did, and you're like, "Man, I wish I'd thought of that." But that's really cool. So awesome. Yeah, I guess I get 3 points.
I'm sure this is correct. Yes, that sounds awesome.
I actually think we can't go too much into details about this because I think it's something that will come out as a special part of the game. But there was an example of how like the VO really was a neat aspect of this. We had a character casting that we were doing, and we actually went through like 4 or 5 rounds on this one. It's a major character in the game, and as we were casting it, we were trying to think about how this character's personality was going to evolve during the story, and how we wanted the player to perceive this character. And there's one thing to have the writing, like the text, and I think text is gets interpreted when you try to add voice to it. And we had, I mean, you and I remember had a number of really, not challenging, but very complicated conversations where it's like, we can take this character one of 2 very different ways based on the castings. We have some really good talent, which way we want to go. And that decision actually backfilled. I remember you saying, this is a great idea. I love the casting. Now I have to go in and start rewriting stuff because I have to like bring that to life even more. I think that's a big example of just how much that vision statement meant to us, to make those RPG elements, those personalities, both in the writing, even if outside the VO, with the characters, like everything, so that you get that world and that fantasy coming together.
Yeah, and it's also been lovely to have we've split the recording up over 2 sort of batches. So we got the first part recorded first, and then one of the things that came in kind of hot was romances. Like they were added fairly late. I wrote them myself. And it was really helpful to know exactly. I'm not, but it's always the hardest part. But it was a lot of, like, it was really helpful to know the voice of the character, because I could then hear them in my mind as I was working on that. And I knew what sort of flavor each of those story arcs needed to have in order to work with the way the character was interpreted.
I know our next Dev Diary is going to be on combat, but we do have one coming up. I think in I think it's Dev Diary 3 or 4. We have this. I'll get the schedule up on the community site either later today or tomorrow, so you guys will see like the next 2 or 3 diaries and their dates. So we know the schedule for the next 2 months. On the ones that we do on character and story, maybe we should pick like a couple scenes. And actually have like the scenes placed so the community can hear some of those VO. So I think that voice really does help bring things alive. It'd be cool to maybe have, if we can pick a couple cool moments and bring those up in the next in that stream. That'd be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go on to the next. Well, we talked about this a little bit. One of the next topics I had on here was about the decision of like having the male and female hero, and I know we talked on this already, but I mean, that was a big part of like wanting to bring that RPG pillar to life too, like the debate of whether we have a version of a female hero in a game based in Rome or not.
Yeah, I mean, again, it ties into wanting to make an RPG. Like it's a staple in the role-playing game genre that in order for it to work, you need to be able to make a character that you want to play. And many people want to play women. Some of them are women and therefore want to play as their own gender. And we wanted to support that kind of decision. Additionally, like it's in a way no different to us than wanting to make an archer or wanting to make like a veles, which is a light infantry class. It's a stylistic choice. It's a character choice, and it informs the kind of role-playing decisions you make. It did, of course, come with a bunch of work in order to tie that into the story and write a bunch of responses to it. But yeah, that was very important to us, that you would be able to create the kind of character that you wanted to play in this narrative.
And then see how the story evolves based on those choices, which, I mean, that's something that happens. I think you guys will be really excited about. I mean, Vikings had this too, but I can't even... I remember the first time we brought a new QA on the team and they played the game and they're like, oh my God, like, how am I going to test this thing? There's so many branches. There's so many things that split off and come back. And some of them aren't necessarily like big impacts, but there's all these subtle reactions and reminders from the characters in the world based on different decisions that you've made. It really, I mean, that's how that pillar was, I think, honestly, the number one pillar for us. We wanted these player-driven choices so that you can play a role, have your fantasy in this Roman world, and let the world remember. I actually talked about this. Now I'm getting excited. I talked about this during one of the interviews that we were doing with the press, where it's like, there's this moment pretty early on, actually. It's in the tutorial section. There's one decision that you get to make, and it has some really minor immediate consequences, some relatively minor, I mean, they don't really change the course of things, but there's like a minor interaction about like another couple of hours in, and then you kind of forget about it. Then you fast forward to, and this is all in the Greece campaign. You play this entire massive Greece campaign, you kind of forget about this decision, and then you end up in Rome, and you're talking to Cato. If you guys know Roman history, is a famous, Cato and Cicero, actually. You're having this conversation with these two pillars of Roman society, philosophers, statesmen, and they're asking you about that decision and why you made the choice that you did. And this is probably like 8 hours later, 10 hours later in gameplay, and you're like, oh, I did do that. And why did I do that? And now you're debating the moral consequences of your choice with Cato, and it's like, oh wow, that actually had way more. And then how you debate that with him and sell him on it determines on whether he's kind of like a fan of yours or like, it's just the organicness of how that stuff comes to life is super exciting. I don't know, it's fun.
Yeah, organic is definitely a good keyword for that, because our process for doing it isn't that we sit down ahead of time and plan out, like there has to be a major choice here, there has to be a major choice there. It's like, actually, when we originally wrote the narrative, it was pretty linear. We just worked out the major story beats that we wanted, and where do you go and who do you interact with and what are the actual quests. And then every time we start working on a specific quest, we think about what kind of choices the player would want to make in this situation. Like, okay, so you're dealing with this guy, this is the situation that's presented to the player. How would the player want to react to that in different ways? What are the different types of role-playing choices that the player would want to make? And then we support those. And then once we have those in the game, obviously people need to respond to that. There needs to be some kind of consequence to each of these decisions you make. And then we start looking at further points in the story where we can tie into that. Our main QA guy, our internal QA guy, has been working on this flow chart for your guys' QA team, where it's like the whole narrative structure with all of these choices. And he just comes back to me like, okay, so this specific character here in the game, you can kill him, you can capture him. What are the consequences to that? And then I'll sit there and think, okay, 2 quests down the line, somebody mentions that, then there's a thing that changes in the next campaign, and then of course it also changes the end game cinematic, and it's just like damn it, okay, I need to map this thing out, and it's a hell of a process.
It's a lot of fun. It's I think where, in my personal humble opinion, where I think Rome is a very special type of game, and it really is. We're tackling that idea of you building these different stories, and I think there's a lot of. I mean, the game is an epic RPG. It's 40+ hour experience, but I definitely know as I'm going through the game, you kind of lose that fear of making the wrong choice, because there's not really a wrong choice. The game just allows you to make choices as you go, and get excited about trying it again and playing a different character. Not playing a different character as in like a character class or type, but playing through as the fantasy of a different personality. Like this time I'm going to be aggressive. This time I'm going to be more moralistic or spiritual or whatever. You can think about those things on how you want to play through it, and then let that story evolve. So, but all that said, there's also a lot of really cool other features in the game, and the next one is, I think, second on our list, very close, which is our core combat experience. It's about, the game is a turn-based strategy game, which is also a really cool aspect of the Expeditions franchise, and this ties into that second pillar, which is let me make sure I get we want to create exciting turn-based combat with a wide range of tactical options driven by loot and character growth. So driven by a couple different things. So what does that mean to you, as we've kind of come up with this pillar? I think there's a lot of things to, to use a cliche phrase, unpack there.
Yeah, so the word tactical would be the key word to mark there. We always think about how to give the player interesting choices in combat. It's the same as with the story, really. It's about the choices you make and how they play out.
Yeah.
We went back to the class-based system from Conquistador for this, because what we found when we opened the class system up so you could pretty much make whatever kind of character you wanted in Viking, was we lost some of that sense of the tactical role of a character. All the characters would often end up kind of being the same character, because you find a combination you like and then you build everyone the same way. And you've got a party of interchangeable people, which isn't so interesting in combat. You want to have that sense that I put the shield guy in front, I put the pike guy behind him, I put the archer up on the ridge, and you have and you put the velas like all the way around flanking in order to try and get behind the enemy. Like, those are the kind of decisions you should be making. And then looking at the terrain, which is a big part of the series as well. That the terrain has always been very handcrafted to create a tactical experience with choke points, high ground, cover, and so on, to really encourage you to read the environment. To that, we then add this whole loot system, which was always very simplified in previous games because of budget constraints and time, right? We kept things very simple. Now we wanted to give you the sense that when you find a new weapon, when you find a new armor, that it actually opens up a lot of new opportunities. And the weapons especially, almost all the attack skills in the game come from the weapons. So you equip a weapon, it gives you access to some attack skills. You don't have a way to just, hit an enemy for basic damage. You have a variety of ways to attack based on which weapon you've equipped. And that means there's always some kind of choice to be made. And you're always sitting there thinking, I really just wanted to do some damage to this guy, but I could potentially do damage to 2 guys, or I could do a little extra damage to him if I set things up in a certain way based on this specific skill that is on the weapon. And then in the meta, when you start finding multiple weapons that offer more weapon skills than you are allowed to equip, because you can bring 3 weapon skills into combat, but you might have a weapon that gives you 5 different skills. Then you have to start thinking about synergies and trying to see what kind of play style do I want? Do I want a sort of like defensive play style? Maybe you put 2 different weapons on a character, one that's a little bit more defensive, one that's a little bit more aggressive, and they synergize differently with your class skills as well. So a whole new panoply of options open up, and that's why I'm really happy we hired a new guy to do combat design, because if I had to do that as well this time, I would die.
Yeah, you guys, everyone, you'll get a chance to meet Hans later. Hans is our combat designer.
That's great.
He's a really cool dude. We'll bring him on for the next stream. I think he'll probably be the guest. So because the next stream is going to be on combat specifically. And by the way, Ruin the Dwarf, hi, nice to meet you. Welcome to the first Rome dev stream. I think there's so first off, one of the things that has come up a lot since we've announced Rome is that conversation between the way we did things in Conquistadors and the way we did things in Vikings. And there actually is a thread that I started, just because I've seen that topic come up at so many different places. I started a thread on the community site. So if people have different opinions on that, who've played both games, or we'd love to hear kind of what your thoughts have been. And I think that's something that you were talking about, we took from Conquistadors based on kind of what we learned from Vikings, was to bring that kind of variation back, that kind of opening up the combat tactical options, so to speak. So you're not really constrained to one set of things. You have a lot of different options that you can play with. And I found that, like, I remember when the first time you guys implemented the new I'm gonna say new because it was new at the time. Originally there was white hits. Like, for a while in the game's development history, we did have those just kind of like baseline attacks. And I remember in a meeting, you were like, we're switching to this whole new thing where there is no white attacks, everything is going to be skill based. And it's just like, oh man, that's a risky choice. Like, are we going to be able to create enough skill? And but it ended up turning out really, really fun. Like, there's so many different decision-making processes around what weapon do I use. Of those, like, say I want to get a gladiuser, right? There could be like 3 different gladiuses I have in my inventory, and they may be all the same strength, but different skills on them. So you have to pick the one that you want and combine those with a shield set of skills, and then you have to pick of those skill sets which one you want to bring. And then you have to look at your other characters and go, okay, I'm going to be the tanky one that is a debuffer, or a tanky one that knocks someone down, and then I'm going to have a spear guy who can take advantage of someone being knocked down. So they're going to be kind of like, you kind of put these different pieces together that I think just it makes the tactical combat so deep and very rich and fun.
It is incredibly deep, and it's something we were always really excited about. Even though it I know from your perspective, it seemed like that idea came in kind of late, but we were talking about it right from the start and discussing whether we wanted to risk it. And in the end, it was just like, no, we're too excited about this now. We had to do it, even though it's like a year into development. Like we can't not do this because that would just be disappointing to everyone. So yeah, but it definitely paid off.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it
also,
worked out.
to your point, that should be noticed. There are actually weapon skills that only get activated if you combine them with a different item in your offhand. So you might have a sword that gives you an extra special attack if you have a dagger in your offhand or a shield in your offhand, like a different skills there depending on what you have. So yeah, again, lots of depth.
Maybe, I don't know, I know you guys are super busy right now, but I think maybe with when Hans joins us for the next stream for combat, we could get a couple like short video clips that kind of show some of those different scenarios. I think that being able to like the audience and everyone being able to see just how different it is with like this set of skills versus a different set of skills with the same weapons pretty much, but they can play so differently and create very different circumstances. And the fun part is, and sometimes not the fun part, but like the enemies do the same things back to you. So you're sitting there and watching like enemies daisy chain stuff together, and you're like, oh no, like I should have set up for that. Now I have to like unwind this entire situation that I've put myself in. That's like you get rooted, and then they throw like a fire, they're like grenades, basically little exploding grenades, and now you guys are burning. You have to run out of the fire, but you're on wood, so the fire's spreading, and you're like, oh, now I have to figure out a way around it. But my guys are all close quartered. It's the tactical situation evolves very quickly in different sets of fights.
That's been one of the big points for us as well, to make sure that we introduce new enemy types that have specific skill sets. Like again, in Viking, your enemies could do basically anything, and you couldn't really predict what they were going to do. Now we're back to the class-based system. We can more easily control what a character can do. So when you see a shaman, you know they can throw a poison bomb. You know what that means, and at least after a couple of times it happens to you, you know to spread your guys out when you see a shaman to not get poison bombed. And so the different enemies you come up with changes the way you play, and as you go through the game, you find different types of enemies in different regions that mean it keeps the combat fresh.
Yeah. I thank you, by the way. I have my producer Alex in the background helping handle some of the questions. But Ruling the Dwarf, I'll actually take that question right now because, and this is, you guys are going to get real-time exposure to how this process goes in development. Sometimes we actually just we had the team sync meeting right before this stream, so I was meeting with all the leads from the team. And Ruling the Dwarf asked a question. He's like, will we be able to deploy objects in battle like spikes, caltrops, palisades, or Scorpios? And no, not really, not quite the way you're thinking. But, and this caused a lot of laughter during a call earlier, there was a feature that was supposed to be in the game for traps, and that feature got cut. It was like, we don't have enough time for this. The game is already massive enough. We're gonna have to cut it. And then Jonas told me in the call today, because I thought it was cut. One of the programmers, I guess, on a weekend or of their own volition, decided to sneakily implement the thing anyways, and not really tell anybody until after it was done. And so now they have this whole feature around traps, and like the designers are going, well, I guess it's here. And it's really fun, so maybe we're going to try to use it. And the artists are like, well, crap, we don't have any animations for that. We've already done with mocap, and maybe we can do stuff with. So, like, that's a two-part.
We're a professional game studio, you guys. I promise. We know what we're doing. We have a project manager.
Oh, man. It's one of those moments where you're just like, it's so cool that you added that thing, but also now we weren't planning for you to add that thing, but we want to take advantage of you adding that thing. Like, it's a very, game development can be fun.
Great work. Please don't ever do that again. Yeah, exactly.
So, no, there's not going to be, like, spears and caltrops and things like that, but they are experimenting with the idea. Well,
Yeah, you have javelins that you can throw. Pila.
As spikes, like, in the ground? I don't think I've ever seen that one.
No, you said spears. I just wanted to say that, yeah, throwing spears. Pila are indeed.
I misspoke. I apologize.
Caltrops are also in the game.
Okay.
That was actually one of the traps that he implemented in his off time.
Right. Okay. Yes, S Smooth. I think it's S Smooth. He was talking about how you remember the canon Conquistadors. We do have catapults, and there are some cool scenes dealing with not catapults, but the.
No, yeah, we have catapults.
There's also the oh gosh, what's the name of it? The spike throwing thing, the big breaching. I'm forgetting the name of what's it called? My Age of Empires brain is not working right now. Anyway, I'll
think about a ballista.
Yeah, ballista. Do we have ballistas as well, or is it just the catapults?
No, we don't have ballistas. We just have catapults.
Okay.
I mean, the ballistas are there, but you don't get to use them.
That's probably what I remember a ballista being on some of the maps, so I guess it's just a catapult.
It's a deco object map.
It's a deco object.
But
Okay.
you do get to use catapults, and they are quite devastating and difficult to use because you have to call them in, and then it takes a while for the actual projectile to hit. So you have to plan ahead and try to manipulate the enemies.
You guys have to find a different thing for the Rome group. We're not bringing the goats thing in here. Like, it has to be different. Goats is yeah. Chickens, no. Penguins, maybe. Something Roman.
We have a cat thing in the actual game, but I don't know if you should go
Oh,
into that.
right. Well, isn't that the whole thing with like Egypt, right? Like Egypt was really big on cats. So we have like the whole.
Love cats.
Yeah. Do we have camels? I don't think we have camels, do we?
No, we don't have camels. We do have other animals that move around and run away when you get close, yeah. But no, not camels.
So let's move on to our third pillar. We have 2 more to go. We have about 20-something minutes left. So the next one, we've hinted about this on a couple of different pieces, which is about the metagame systems and kind of those bigger aspects. And it's so the statement from the diary is that multiple metagame systems focus around building and leading your legions in conquest of foreign lands. And that is something that I think, at least from my perspective and talking with you guys in the very beginning, of all the things that we were trying to do on this project, and some of them were very scary and intimidating, this is one of the ones that was probably the most difficult to figure out how to approach, because it was much different than previous titles, and in a way, because of the fantasy of Rome, a lot larger, like a lot more complicated to tackle. So
it underwent a lot of revision during the development as well. Initially, we imagined that you would have one legion and then you would control each of the cohorts individually. So you would have 10 different units on the world map that could be sent to do stuff, and you could merge them into larger groups where you have like a whole mana pool moving around, for example. And it was way too much. Like, it was just way too much busy work. And then we had this whole management thing that would kick in when you've conquered a region, where you had to build stuff, which you can still do, but it's different. And you had to like beat down uprisings and so on. And it just became a lot of focus on upkeep and just keeping your territory together, which can be fun, but it meshed poorly with the actual story we wanted to tell. So we changed it a bunch of different times, and what we ended up with was one legion unit that moves around, and you can send it to do missions, and you can send it to capture regions, and you'll see the different regions on the world map when you zoom out, and then you can send your legion to attack a certain outpost. The enemy army there will defend. We have a whole system for resolving the fight, and that then ties into all these meta systems that we have in the cap, where you can recruit people in the barracks, you can develop new stratagems in the workshop, you can improve the morale of your troops, and so on. A lot of the focus of the resource management mechanics that we had in previous titles has been sort of reconceptualized to be about the Legion instead, because it's like, sure, you're in hostile territory with your 12-man group, but you also have a 6,000 person Legion hanging out a couple of days travel away. So is it really such a big problem that you don't have enough materials to craft? No, you would leave that with the Legion, and you can always go back there. So a lot of things had to change in order to accommodate this, and a lot of those decisions you had to make before about upkeep for your own little group have now been reconceptualized to be about managing this Legion, which is, to be honest, a lot cooler in my opinion.
Yeah, I know there's been some people commenting about the differences, or asking, and I think we'll probably talk about this in more detail as we show more about some of these metagame features, but the systems from the previous game, specifically around camping and all the different things that you do in camping. And I remember early on, it's like, I mean, you're going to be the general of an army. I don't think you're worried about making a fire, right? Like, you have people for that. I mean, you do get to the point that the fantasy of this game is for you to be this, become this legatus, and all of both the responsibilities, but also like the luxuries of not having to go and dealing with some of those smaller level decisions. And I feel like, a lot of the features that the core fans of the Expedition series may be familiar with are still going to be there. They're just represented differently, and I do think they enhance the fantasy of the role you're playing a lot better. So we were talking about the metagame stuff. I think the last thing you said that they heard was what, Jonas, again? We were asking about...
I was in the middle of you saying something about the resource management, I guess.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, basically, we lost a couple minutes, but I think the cool thing is that all of the resource management and everything that was in that people are comfortable with the franchise from Vikings and Conquistadors. It's all still there. It's all still present in a sense that you're still making those kind of decisions, but they're in different places. And a lot of the tedium, I think, has been really reduced, and it feels a lot more appropriate and more, honestly, more engaging and more fun to being this, legatus of a Roman centurion or legion. So
essentially, we really wanted to eliminate any sense of busy work. We found in Viking that just adding more choices to the existing camping system, it didn't get us where we wanted to be. It still eventually ends up feeling like a chore, and so we just wanted to make sure that now when you engage with the camping system, it's because you want something. It's because you want to craft new items or you want to talk to people. Then you head back to camp, and it's your choice. It's not something you have to keep doing all the time just in order to move across the game world.
There's a thing that's you mentioned the cat thing, and cats are starting to come up in chat on lots of different ways. I didn't remember this from Vikings, so maybe I missed this, but I guess you could pet a cat in Viking for good luck?
I mean, I don't remember that, but I'm not at all surprised because I am a bit obsessed with cats, so I'm sure I put that in there, but I will say, if you get, here's a hint for you. Just write this down for when you play the game. If you get the chance to say a good thing about cats, do it. There might be a little positive reinforcement in there for you.
Oh, okay. So maybe part of our polish in the next few months is going to be adding a little more cat stuff in there.
We have a whole cats versus dog things going on in the company. There's the dog faction that's like, why don't we have more dog stuff? And then there's Fasi and I who write the game, so we get to decide, and we like cats. That's just how it is.
The two writers get to decide that it's more. Yeah. So that's a little bit of an override right there. You get to win the fight just by being the ones who authored the content.
Yeah, but it's reflected in the whole Rome versus Egypt thing as well, right? The Egyptians loved their cats, the Romans loved their dogs, so it all ties together.
Yeah, S-Smooth is commenting about how you can adopt a cat in Vikings. It kills rats around your camp, and I guess I'm going to mispronounce the Viking name wrong, but Roshkva really likes it if you have the cat, so there's a whole thing about that.
I meant, yeah, that's a whole thing, and there's something like that in Rome as well. We took it a step further, but yes, it makes a reappearance.
See, I'm a rabbit man myself. We had a bunny for a long time. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. But I love rabbits. I know my significant other. She would absolutely go crazy if any of the products that I work on had a rabbit thing in there. She watches a lot of these streams and is always like talking about it. She's like, "When are you gonna work on a game that has rabbits in there?" So
I will make a note here. Investigate rabbits. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
She always gets upset too because a lot of games use rabbits for food, and she's like, "That's not fair. Rabbits are great. Like you gotta have rabbit pets, and they actually do make really, really good pets." I became a rabbit person in the last 5 or 6 years, and I am now very much one of them. So there's actually for all those who have not joined yet, please join the community site. You see it up there on the screen. community.expeditionsseries.com, and we have a getting to know you thread, and one of the questions that I ask on the getting to know you thread is everyone's pets. So if you have different pet preferences, it'd be awesome to see what everyone has. Maybe if it goes enough traction, we can do like a share your pet on one of the streams. We can grab different pet pictures from you have cats, right? You have cats in your...
My parents do, but I live in an apartment.
Your parents do. Okay. Yeah. One of the I'm gonna not pronounce your name right. Aoxus, I guess. But they have the Agora rabbits, the giant big rabbits. Those are always fun, like the massive ones. I had a friend that had one of those. They're huge. Nice. All right, so let's go on to our last topic here as far as the vision statements are concerned. And this one, I think, is also been sprinkled through everything. You can see how things kind of tie together. But the statement from the Dev Diary is historically inspired framework to create a believable, fun world. And as we're seeing beautiful pictures of Gaul and whatnot from our cinematic trailer come through. So, it's I think this ties into so many different things. It ties into the story and things we talked about. But one thing we haven't touched on, I'm sure August, our art director, would be sad that we haven't yet. So there's a chance we can chime into it. We've also spent a lot of time on the visuals of the game and the art and the weapons and the armor and everything, and trying to make those rooted too. Maybe you can talk about how we've used those to bring our world to life and make them more historically grounded.
Yeah, it's always an interesting dynamic between me and August, because the design department is always like, no, we have to have all these crazy skills and traps and abilities and so many different items. And then August is like, yeah, but the historical accuracy though, there's like the Roman legion, it uses a particular type of armor, particular helmet. Like he's the history enforcer, and we're always kind of battling a little bit, trying to pull in a different direction, make sure that we represent the fun and he represents the accuracy. Um, but yeah, as I've sort of touched on before, for us it's more about making sure that the feeling of the game world is authentic. Like you feel like you're in the right period, in the right place in history, and that has been a lot about getting the costumes right, the outfits. Actually, you'll find that in the beginning, the kind of armors that you have access to are more from the early parts of the 1st century BC, and then as you get further up the history, then you start getting the segmentata and so on. So there's a little bit of a technological advancement there that matches the period. And August just has a huge library of historical reference images of like archaeological material and stuff.
He said that to me once. I think we were getting ready to do like the key art and logo experiments back it was a year and a half ago or so or whatever. And I was like, yeah, we have artists that are working on this. We'd love to give them all the reference. And August is like, are you sure you want all my reference? I'm like, yeah, no, just give me everything you have. And I got this folder of just like hundreds and hundreds of images. And I'm like, oh my God, you weren't kidding when you said like you have a lot of references.
He really micromanages that as well. Like when the artist posts stuff, he's like, okay, you need to fix this and this and this. It's not historically accurate. These rivets are wrong and so on. I don't know how he became this sort of history. Like he has no background in it. He's such a detail-oriented guy. He became a history expert.
It's actually you have the key art behind you, and I know when we were working with the artist on that, and as we were going through, there was a couple times where like a different sword would be used or the hilt of the sword would be wrong, and like August comes with all these little like bubbles and points. It's like, nope, this is the wrong sword for this. This bow is the wrong type of wood. Like this material is not the way this material would lay. And we had that same thing.
I put spikes on this brazier, and he was like, no, that's not gonna happen. Here's the brazier you need. Yeah.
I think it sounds it sounds subtle, but all of those things add up together, and either you get them right or you don't. And I think when you take the extra time to get them right, I think it does help that world come to life, because it's those details. I think that it's when you allow when you don't have a cohesive vision, I guess. Then things just instinctually feel a little bit off. But when all that stuff just starts working, and when you're doing something historical, you have real world to pull from, then the world feels correct. It feels cohesive. It feels, I don't know. I think that's really, really fun, and how he's done that. And it's actually something I think, that came out in the early experiments with, and I'm gonna gotta pronounce it the right way and not the way we said it for the last 2.5 to 3 years, Nasamonis, which is the tribal group in Africa, North Africa, you run into, and looking at like where they lived and the colors they used in their cloth, and like trying to make. We have this one map called the Court of Heaven. You'll see it's in our trailers. It's a really beautiful map with all of these tents and everything, and the tribal characters walking around. And they're in garb that would have been very appropriate for those people in that part of the world to wear, and it just is beautiful. It's like taking a peek into that historical place and then playing and living in it. It's quite. I don't know, I get really excited about that.
Yeah, that level also really brought out the design art dichotomy, where he was like, this environment is way too fantasy. It's way too fancy. I'm like, yes, but have you considered that it looks amazing? And then we had a whole tug of war, and what we ended up with both still looks absolutely gorgeous, but is a lot less fantasy. So it was a nice compromise.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun watching those dialogues go back and forth. Though I will say it's something that we that, to August's credit, I think, because he became an expert of those visuals so much, it actually allowed us to make very specific strategic choices on when we wanted to bend that fantasy to make the game more fun. So like there are armors and weapons that are a little flashier, and August has said, it's a game. Like we got to make this stuff look cool. The player needs to acquire it. But then it's bending those things in the right way. Actually, some people don't know my background. When I was younger, I was a musician and a composer. I wrote music a little bit, and I remember sitting with early composition teachers and me being, a little spitfire. I'm like, I don't need to learn all of the rules for how to do like proper form of these genres of orchestral or not classical, but different styles of music. And they're like, when you look at someone like Beethoven. Beethoven knew how to do that stuff better than anybody, but then he broke the rules to make his version of it, and that's how he evolved the craft. And I think it's another great example of, I think, how August's understanding of that world has allowed us to bend and exaggerate things enough to make the vibrance and the excitement and the creative visuals that you do have fun playing in come to life without breaking everything. It's really true. A compliment to him. Now he's going to be upset with me for talking him up so much, but I think it's a true compliment to that team. They did a great job with it.
Yeah, and he always maintains that, I make it sound like it's a question between making it look good or making it look realistic, but obviously not, right? And that's always his point, is we can make it look good and also still be authentic. And we've always bent reality a little bit in this series, like to larger or greater extents. A lot of it is about knowing how to make it still feel right. Like if you have a weird dream sequence, or you maybe walk into a cave with some weird poisonous fumes, that allows us to explore something less realistic while still staying inside that real world framework. So there's always plenty of ways we can push it.
Yep. So I know we are pretty much at the end of the stream. We lost 5 minutes, so unless my producer says we have to cut right, I'd like to maybe grab 5 more minutes and grab a few questions. So I'm going to just jump right into them, and I'll let him tell me when we have to close out. So one of the ones that I wanted to grab that actually just came up, it was Yettrex123 that says, I am guessing right that the game place various historical events closer than they really happen. It's like the historical events happen a little bit closer than they did in real life.
Yeah, I think we worked out that it's about a 20-year period, and we've compressed it to roughly 10 years. There's some time skips along the way. They're at logical points, so you don't feel like you missed a bunch of stuff all of a sudden. And yeah, it is compressed. But again, the previous games did the same thing, and here I think we've controlled it a little bit better. It's more clear what period of time we are compressing into what other period of time. We don't play quite as fast and loose with the time period as we used to.
And then Axis was asking about the region management earlier. He or she said region management and camp management are going to be discussed later in the diaries. Yeah, and so I think we're going to do a diary in general about the metagame systems, and we'll talk about it's how you manage your legion and how that goes into managing, like, in conquering different territories and different areas. There's a number of systems about that, and we'll be able to probably show off the legion combat system at that point too. So that'll all come up in a later stream.
Nice.
S Smooth says, do you have to play Gaul, North Africa, and Greece in a specific order, or is that up to the player?
You do have to play those in a specific order. Again, this ties into this. I would say overall, the story of Rome is structured roughly like the Hispaniola campaign in Conquistador, that there are these specific story beats you have to hit. You can go out and explore along the way, but it is a linear progression of narrative, and then it branches a bunch, and you have a many different options. But yeah, these events do have to happen in a specific order.
Yep. And that's what it's done that way for the political drama and the story. So it definitely makes sense why you're doing those things. It's not an artificial, like, oh, you're going here and then going here. It's directly, there's a chain of events that's happening, and some of them are caused by you, some of them are caused by other people, and you're reacting to those chains of events. And that's how the story evolves to need these different parts of the world.
Yeah, it's all driven by the relationship between you and the antagonist, right?
Yeah.
Like any good story, it's the protagonist wants something, the antagonist wants something, and then plot happens.
Yep. Yetrix123 asked another question about how many portraits are available for the main character, that we've seen 2 males and 2 females. I think we're still working on the final number of that, but it's definitely more than the 2 that you've seen so far. I think we're like 6 or 8-ish right now. Do you remember the current rough count?
Right now we have 8, but we're definitely aiming to have more.
Yeah.
Not sure how many more we'll end up with. It depends on how much time we have.
And then one question, I actually don't know the answer to this completely, but it's probably a multifaceted question. S Smooth asked earlier about how many different nationalities there are in the game. Like are there, I'm going to pronounce these words right, Pictish, Christian, Danish units, and Vikings, each with their unique abilities. Are there unique Greek, Gaul, and North African units? I know we have a number of these because we have the different meshes, and I think the skills are a little more abstracted. I don't know how, are there unique skills per regional soldier as well? Okay, cool.
So we have, off the top of my head, we have Greeks, we have Berber, which are the people of Nasamonis and other parts of North Africa. We have Egyptians. You're sorry. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on stream, but I did. Yes, you're right. Nasamonis. Ah, damn it.
We've been literally saying that name wrong for the entire project until about like a month or so ago. And when Jonas told me that we've been pronouncing it wrong, all of us, our brains leaked out of our ears. We're like, oh no, how are we going to correct ourselves? We've been saying that. So, okay, anyways, Nasamonis, right?
Yeah, Nasamonis, then we have the Egyptians, we have the Gauls, and then the Gauls have a bunch of different sub-factions based on, there's the Helvetii, there's the Alverni, there's the Aedui, there's the Eburones, and that's about it. I don't think we have any others. Those all share kind of a skill set. They all have their different versions of the main classes, and those different versions then have specific skills. Some of them are shared with you, like they can use some of the same things you can. Some of them are a bit unique to them, but then it's a limited skill set per class, so you can learn what a character class does and predict that the next time you meet them.
Awesome.
But it does keep things fresh as you move through the game.
I'm going to take one more question and we're going to call it. And I'm going to answer this one as a short one because we didn't touch on this during the stream, and I actually realized it's a great disservice. Rule and the Dwarf asked, what culture will our companions have? And I think this is something we didn't touch on today that we'll make sure to talk more. You do have a number of companions in the game that are core characters. They all have their own backstories, personalities. If anyone's played an Expedition series before, they're kind of familiar with this concept. But I think, like everything with Rome, it's substantially more than it's ever been. The unique quest lines for each of the companions sometimes stretch across multiple regions. They impact the ending. They impact some really dramatic moments in the story. And each of them, you see 4 of the core companions behind Jonas in the key art: Sonaros, Julia, Bestia, and Kaiso. And there's, I think, one more that we don't represent in the key art that you meet along the way. But these are all you meet in the very beginning of the game. And they're very, very dramatic characters with different personalities and relationships with you. And we will definitely spend some time talking about them in detail because they're very complex and multi-layered. If anyone fans of writing, they're 3-dimensional in every way, shape, and form. It adds a lot to, I think, the narrative of the game when you have these close friends and companions that you journey with. So what are the cultures, though? You rattle them off really quick for each of the different companions?
Sure. Synergies is Greek. He's this gentleman up here, the philosopher-looking dude. Khalida and Kaiso are Roman. Bestia is from Mauritania. And then Deianira is from Scythia. She's the Amazon.
Yep. And there you go.
And they all have their own personal story arcs that you can engage with and have multiple different endings and all this good stuff.
Awesome. Everyone, that's our stream, our first dev stream. Jonas, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you had fun.
Thanks a lot. It was fun, yeah.
Awesome.
Looking forward to next time already.
We're going to be, for the first month or two, the streams are usually going to be every 3 weeks. But this stream was actually supposed to happen last week, and we had some technical issues that pushed it back to this week. So you guys get a treat, and that the next stream's happening in 2 weeks, and I'll post that date and topic and time and everything on the community site. Again, it's community.expeditionseries.com. We would love for you to join and start participating with us. We picked this time slot. We can move it. So if you guys have big opinions about doing it a little bit earlier, or maybe even a hair later, though it's pretty late in Denmark, we can explore that. But please join the site and look for the next Dev Diary coming up here in 2 weeks on combat. We're talking about the turn-based combat specifically. We'll show off some new gameplay footage on that, hopefully. And I think we'll have, I'm pretty sure Hans is going to join us for at least part of that session. So you'll get to meet another one of the developers. So again, yes. So again, everyone, thank you so much for joining. And we're going to have a lot of fun getting to know you, and have a great day. Cheers. Ave, right? Ave.
Yeah, Ave.
Ave. I gotta pronounce it right. All right.
Yeah, it's Salwe. Salwe means goodbye.
Yes. Okay. Salwe.